What's going on, guys, and welcome to another spoiler recap here at Big Gold Belt Media. I'm Cam. This is Damian G. Today we are going to talk about the Sympathizer, episode 2, which is titled Good Little Asian, which premieres on April 21st at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on HBO and streaming on Max. Man, I mean, this episode was a little bit lighter, I would say, right, than the first. Definitely a little bit more relaxed, but we pick right back up in the first beginning, the scenes of this episode, and just lead us through what exactly we got to see as we start this new episode.
Right. Okay, so where we left off with the captain trying to get on this plane, Bond being pretty much shocked at the death of his wife and child. And bombs are going off everywhere. And we pick up around there. Obviously, he's still in the internment camp or the POW camp, the captain is. So we're still getting these flashbacks that may or may not be accurate, depending on I might have left something out. But the first start of it all is bombs still going off, Bond holding his dead wife while running for the plane, and the captain's holding Bond's dead child just to get them on the plane. Now, what we also find out not so much later is that his wife and his child were buried or were put to rest in these wood boxes where people were just hammering, where everybody else who died in the Vietnam War was given this whole American send-off. Right. Whereas, Bond had to go through this whole of seeing his wife and child put in just a regular old box. And what winds up happening is that Bond is shell-shocked. Yeah. To the point where he doesn't speak, because we have flashed back to when Bond and the captain were living together. Bond is pretty much PTSD'd out. And you and I talked about this yesterday when we were watching the episode. Yeah. He doesn't respond. He's despondent. He's out to lunch, as I like to tell people. And he basically has become a raging alcoholic, but he doesn't communicate. And we've learned that they're living together, the captain and Bond, and it's a really awkward roommates situation until we get to, let's say, the end of the episode, which we'll get to. They took a different turn that I thought Bond was going to turn to in this situation. But to peruse this episode for everybody, there's liquor stores involved, there's cultural appropriation, there's paranoia. So this may be light on action, but it's heavy on secrecy, espionage, like we talked about in our previous review, and just on the edge of your seat, what's going to happen next. So I think that's what this episode was very high on. And you have a very interesting theory about why Robert Downey Jr. is playing multiple characters in this show. And we'll get to that. But so that's pretty much setting the table for everybody else. Welcome to America, everybody, on the Sympathizer.
That's where we are here. And it's funny because this episode started out, I mean, like you said, it originally started out with him in the POW camp, right? Reading the letter that he had previously written in the first episode. But of course, there's a little bit more information that we didn't get to see in that episode. So he's explaining how he was, able to jump on the plane and then get to America, which we know that they were in a concentration camp, I guess you can say, in Arkansas on here. And him trying to get on his feet now that he is in the States. Bond is obviously in such a bad mental state that he's not paying attention to anything that the captain is doing. So the captain, of course, is like, you know what? I'm supposed to be reporting back still to North Vietnamese people back home, or the communists. So I need to find a way, right? Saman. So in his mind, for some reason, he pictured Bond being in this nice new office. Now they came up. He's like, they won. He's in a nice new office. Let's go. Yes. It's crazy because I kept thinking, I was like, man, what if he's not even really reporting to Mon anymore? What if he's writing these messages to someone else? What if Mon accidentally got killed or something happened to him?
Oh, yeah, that's part of the intrigue. Exactly.
He's writing back and forth with someone else. So I'm like, man, I was like, there's so many different things because, this isn't you're writing a letter. It's not like you're on FaceTime where you're like, all right, facial confirmation. All right, I'm gone. You're writing a letter to someone and you're like, all right, I want to make sure this is the right person. But they obviously had some type of way to create the iodine invisible ink,
That
and
was so
the only
cool.
way for them to do it was through like starch, I think. You want to use rice starch, but they didn't have that,
Cornstarch.
so they used cornstarch.
Because
And I
this is
guess when you heat that
America.
up, yeah,
Cornstarch.
he's like, we got cornstarch here. The guy in the Texas, I guess like a drugstore, I guess in the Texas area. And I think Captain is still he's trying to balance life, but also he's trying to keep Bond above water, right? And
Yes.
doesn't want him to see him go down or drown in his sorrows. But then also has a job to still fulfill, and still a facade to kind of keep up, as far as like, hey, I'm still loyal to the major. Well, not the major. I'm sorry, the general.
The general. That's a different character. The major.
And
We'll
the
get to
general,
that.
man, the general is funny, man. He got some really funny points in this show. But once again, while the captain is telling this story, he has a hiccup, right? He stops and he's like, oh, wait, I forgot to tell you guys this part. And let me go back. And then we get a reverse back in the time when they first get to the Arkansas
refugee camp, I guess.
Yeah, refugee camp.
Yeah.
And the emperor, I mean, not the emperor. Oh my God, I want to call him the emperor. The general, because he acts like he's an emperor, to be honest with you. The general is sitting there and he thinks for some reason, you know what? My people need me. I need to be strong. Let me go to wear my suit, right?
Bro.
And I'm like, don't do that. It's like you guys have ascended into America. This is it. That's over. You're not going back to like fight, and pull back.
You're just a dude now, sir.
Sorrow. It's done. It's done. Can you just explain to us what happens when he finally puts on his outfit and then just thinks he can parade around the camp?
Have you ever had a supervisor at a job where they think they're this great leader of your team, and they think that they're so delusional that they're going to inspire you by doing either a great speech, an act of service, or some sort of just, putting on a special uniform to rally the troops? Like, let's say you work fast food, right? And you work in the kitchen, but your manager comes in dressed like a fry cook to spark morale. My guy came in suited up in general wear, ready to battle.
Yeah.
Whereas he walks in the mess hall where we get a firsthand view of what everybody's eating, which is pretty much slop. It's like the most bootleg mac and cheese, the most bootleg beans you've ever seen, some slop. So he walks in to the mess hall, and his soldiers do salute him because they see him. The general is here. We salute. But in a weird turn of events, there are some women in the audience that they just hate him. They can't stand the general. They said, you betrayed us. This is your fault. They're blaming him for their current situation of why they had to flee home to basically, be almost in an internment camp in America for this quote unquote safer life. And they start throwing food at him because he's doing the rounds of like, how's it going? Everything okay? How you holding up? And trying to shake hands and kiss babies, like a politician.
Right.
And they're throwing food at him, talking about, oh, you taste it then. You let us know how it tastes, and things like that. And the general doesn't understand. He's like, wait a minute, hold up. Why are these women mad at me? So the captain, using his wits, is saying, okay, let me get the general out of here. So they go into one of these latrines, right? These outhouses.
Yeah.
And the women are out there trying to shake this outhouse to drop the general on the side. And the general is starting to lose it, man, because he is shocked that people are turning against him so quickly at this place in Arkansas. And the captain is trying to explain to the general why they feel the way they feel. And general can't understand it. He is just totally out to lunch. He doesn't understand why his people don't love him anymore, et cetera, et cetera. But they're doing it in this latrine. So the captain's holding his nose because he's about to throw up.
Yeah.
So if you've ever been in a porta potty and it's not that fresh, so too many people have used it and no one's come to clean it, that's how the captain is trying to tell the story to the general. The general is no selling the fact that they're in this latrine, but the captain is super sensitive to the smells going on around, talking about maggots and the stench. And he's trying to let them know, like, hey, maybe they're mad because they were given a false promise. What we talked about in our last review, that Claude might have overpromised and underdelivered. but that seems to be everybody's running gag here in the show so far. Everybody makes these grand promises and under delivers. So the general's basically tasking the captain with trying to find out who's responsible for spreading so much misinformation about the general. And you find out as the episode goes on, it's starting to spin the general into a deeper and deeper hole of who done it, right?
Yeah.
In order to reclaim his former glory. So we're in this internment camp. They're not happy. And then what winds up happening is, as part of the captain's plan, I think, forgive me if I'm a little off, part of the captain's plan was to get out early so he can go and do his job. So basically, he found a sponsor, right, for him and Bond. So he got out of the camp before the general does, to the point where, because we flash forward a little bit, to the point where he's saying goodbye to the general's family, and the captain kind of smugly tells the general, man, I wouldn't have thought I got out before you, like getting out of prison before you.
Yeah.
And we find out his benefactor is this very wealthy, I want to say Oriental Studies professor. I think that was his title, Professor Hammer, which is also played by Robert Downey Jr. On the condition that Bond comes with him because he still wants to take care of Bond. So when he says goodbye, you know, he hugs the missus of the general. I think she has a specific name in the show. Gives the daughter shit, you know, which again, if you've looked, and spoilers, if you looked at Wikipedia like I have, you know what their relationship really is going to wind up being. And then he salutes the general. And now we're in almost like the present, where they're driving through the desert, I guess the Las Vegas desert at this point, in this very nice drop top convertible car from circa 1970s to make it all the way to California to meet with their benefactor, with Bond still going through PTSD in the back of the car, right? And then in your own words, Cam, because I don't want to take up all the time, can you explain to the audience Professor Hammer? Because I feel like eccentric doesn't do enough justice for this character.
Yeah, he's a little bit of everything. I would say he's eccentric, he's a little flamboyant, he's very over the top. I feel like he's culturally ignorant as well, because he says a lot of things that are very, very not only condescending but kind of disrespectful, you know, when you're talking about a different culture.
Racist, bro.
yeah, a tad bit of racist. I mean, and he is, of course, a Oriental professor, which I've never heard of this before in my life. I didn't even know that was a thing, right? But it seems like something he made up to tell the school, hey, I'm very cultured in this culture. Well, okay, well, to an extent, right? I mean, you're not as I wouldn't think you're as thorough as someone actually from the country that was born into all of these different cultural upbringings. I'm pretty sure there's some places that you're missing in there, but he's done a lot of his studying and a lot of his background, and he feels like, you know, he is that guy. And we get to see him, but, you know, I guess they had a previous relationship when he went to, I believe it was West Cal Poly, I think, right? Yeah, it was at that school. And he seems like he's become into another situation where the captain has become the errand boy for another person, right? He went and left the general and wasn't the errand boy for him, but now he's like teacher's pet. And this is where it kind of comes into effect with this, you know, the title, Good Little Asian, right? It just seems like he's doing all the things to stay in the good graces of this professor who everybody knows he's an asshole, right? That's how I see it. I'm like, you know, he's trying to stay here. Right. He has no place to go. He has really no money. So he's like, you know what? I got to play this part to be able to stay on the good graces of this dude that everybody thinks is a prick deep down. So we get to see actually Sandra Ho's character who actually jumped right in here, right? No,
Sandra not Sandra
Ho.
Oh,
sorry, Sandra. Sandra Oh. So we get to see Sandra Oh in here, and she does some hoe things in here too, though. So her name is Sophia Mori in this in this episode, and we get to see her as
the Japanese.
That's what they call the good little Japanese secretary is what she is actually for the professor, and she actually will become the boss, is what they say, of the captain while he's working for the professor at this point.
Right.
So the professor kind of gives him a assignment. I believe it was like Oriental, or compare your Oriental side versus your, what was the other part?
Occidental
Side, right? And I'm like, why are you giving him this assignment, dude? Like, that's just kind of weird. You know, I'm thinking like he just wants to write a paper. All right, you know, something for him to do to get, you know, his feet wet and back into the rhythm of school, right?
Yes.
He has him write this whole entire thing. He brings it to the professor at this party that he invites him to. And everybody,
which the professor gave him an outfit of
right,
very
to
Bruce
wear.
Lee-in.
And I'm like, and of course it's like a traditional, I think it was like Chinese dress, right? I don't think it was a Vietnamese outfit though.
Yeah, it was
like
not,
the single button
Vietnamese.
up, straight down. Yeah, it wasn't a Vietnamese outfit, but they gave him, he just generally put him in an outfit that he thought be fitting for his look at this point. And he gets there and he sees Sophia is actually dressed in a Komodo. She has like the full outfit on. And of course, the professor is dressed somewhat similar. All of his fancy, you know, charismatic friends around him. He had the head wrap on and everything. And I'm like, come on, bro. And then he comes to the captain as he arrives in the party and says, oh, I give you an assignment. Can you go ahead and, you know, give us a speech?
Tell the audience what you found. Yeah.
I'm like, huh? Why is he making this man, you know, like a lapdog dance in front of these people right now, you know, for like, it just seemed like fun and show. Did that scene kind of get you a little like fired
I was
up?
irritated.
How did you feel?
I was irritated. So the captain has to read this essay as to, you know, what are the differences between both sides of his culture, because he has a French father, we find out, and obviously a Vietnamese mother. Right. And he has to talk about the different personas in both of those upbringings, because he did go to school in the States versus, you know, going to school in Vietnam. So he has a different view of the world, aside from his AI inspired eyes, in my opinion. And it's almost, as the speech itself is almost an homage to being a spy, where it's saying, on one hand, I'm expected to act a certain way because of my heritage, but on the other hand, because of my heritage, on the other side, it's like, oh, well, you know, if he makes a kerfuffle, you know, if he makes a mistake, right, or if something happens along the lines. But it's very, I found the speech to be very telling about how he truly feels about this whole thingamabob, right? About the whole being in the States, the whole leaving home, the whole cultural, I want to say civil war he seems to be experiencing on the outside, but in reality he claims to be fully Vietnamese. He doesn't really care about his non-Vietnamese sides, but he has to play the part, right? Because he's a good little Asian boy, as the title of the episode says. And it got to the point where the audience was so captivated, they were so enthralled with what he was saying, that Professor Hammer realizes the attention is not on him anymore. Yeah. So he goes, that's enough. Okay.
Yeah. We've heard enough. Okay.
You know, and then he pulls Sandra Oh's character in, the professor does, and to talk about her in her kimono outfit. When I say I felt cringy when he inappropriately touched her neck, to show off the nape of her neck and show an erogenous zone on the back of her neck, I felt hella uncomfortable, man.
Yeah, I did too.
And I know it's 1970s. It was a different time. Free love, baby. I get that. Right. But whoa, that made me feel some type of way. Which we then, after all that, we're then shown a scene of Sandra Oh's character talking to the captain, and they're just going back and forth. You know, there's flirting going on. It's flirting. Like, it's not even like, hey, I'm just gonna be cute and make you laugh. It's some really highbrow, while still sticking it to the man, flirting going on between the two of them. Yeah. And it leads to a very interesting exchange about stories. So Cam, I'm gonna let you tell the audience.
I knew you were gonna make me talk about it. So I was like, oh God, no.
I'll let you talk about it, because so there's multiple times before you go that there's multiple times in this episode they say, hey, can I tell you a secret, or let me tell you a story?
It is a bit wild
about letting you in to what my brain is, because Sandra Oh's character calls him out on it, talking about, you're so full of shit. You know, like I
Yeah.
want to know something real about you because you're playing both sides,
Right.
i.e., like what a spy does. So, in order to gain her trust, because that's his boss,
Mhm.
what story does he tell?
So initially when they start having the conversation on the top of the balcony, she offers him like a sushi wrap that actually has squid on top. And
Yep.
he immediately looks at it and is like repulsed by
Like,
the
I'm good.
squid. And I'm thinking like, maybe, I don't know, maybe allergic. I don't know what's going on. But the story he decides to tell her, he says, you know what, I'm going to tell you something serious. And I probably am making a mistake by telling you this story. So he says, one day my mother is an awesome cook, right? She decided to make us all a treat. She decided to make us squid.
Yeah.
So she sat there and she had the squid all laid up. We went ahead and cleaned it. And then I believe she forgot something in the market. Like she needed something to make the squid. So she went to the market and left
Yes.
him at home alone. Him being a 14-year-old boy, I'm not sure why being a 14-year-old boy had to do with this, because I don't think anybody would have done this. Maybe, I don't know.
If you've seen American Pie, hey man,
That's
it's not
true.
out the
That's
realm of
true. I take that
possibility.
back. I take that back. I take that back. So anything and everything at this point. So he sees one of the squids, and you see him kind of like touching it, and then kind of like putting
All
his fingers
slimy and
inside of it.
squirmy.
He's like, "Wow, it is really slimy." And he decides to
Finagle.
finagle himself with. I'm trying to find the best term for this, honestly. And go to town with this squid. So he completes his job with this squid, and he decides, you know what, I'm gonna mark the squid so that I know which one I did it with, literally. And obviously, so his mom wouldn't eat it, and so he had to eat that squid. And his mom comes home, she gets ready to like pick all the pieces of squid that she's about to eat. He's like, no, really, really fast. He grabs it and he starts chewing it, and he like gags, like, oh my God, this is kind of disgusting. I don't know, it was the taste or maybe just the thought of him thinking like, oh my God, what have I done? Why did I do this with this squid? Because obviously, I can't throw it away. She knows there's 3 pieces, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's no way for me to disregard this whole entire squid piece, because she'll be pissed. She'll probably beat me, and then I'm in trouble, like, so he's like, you know what? I'm just going to take the L. I got to eat this piece of squid. And Sandra Oh's character is like
That was
livid by
funny.
the story. She's like, no way, you're lying. He's
Squid
like,
fucker.
yep, calls him a squid fucker. And that
She was
sticks for a
great.
little bit through this episode. That is the story. Like, and I think honestly, it wasn't the fact that she related to it, but I think because she understood that it was something so honest and so pure and so disgusting that she couldn't help but to respect him for doing it. And this honestly developed into a sexual relationship right after.
Yeah.
And I'm like, geez, man. Like, she knows you smashed a squid, and she's okay with it, baby. Because it was straight. Your next scene is like them in the bedroom getting it in.
Yeah.
Right.
He was only been working there a week, apparently.
Yeah. And it's funny because Sandra Oh's character Sophia actually tells him at one point in the show that I'm 46 years old and I've been doing things my way all this time. So for us to be together and for us doing this type of thing, nothing's gonna change.
Yeah.
And obviously, knowing a person a week and then getting it in, she don't mind. She don't care. She's
Free
here
love,
for
baby.
a good time. She said, I think she said it right. She said the only love I'm
Mhm.
looking for is free love, right? That's as free as you get right there. I mean,
That's free, man.
hit the
I mean,
squid.
she's yamming her subordinate, bro. Like, let's just
Yeah.
be real here. She's
Yeah.
yamming her subordinate, and we have like a montage of them trying to find places to have sex at work, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And that's
With
funny in and of itself because, like we said, he's still got a job to do and not just be a good little Asian boy for the Americans, because he gets a call at the office, right?
Yeah.
At the school, and Sandra Oh picks up the phone and she goes, "It's your boss." And she goes, "Wait a minute, I thought I
Right.
was your boss."
Right.
And it
right,
turns
right, right.
out it's the general talking about, "Did you find the mole yet?" And
Oh,
the
man,
captain's
I
like, "Fuck you talking about? I
think
gave
about
up on that
shit.
mission. I gave up on that mission." So again, he has to play it off because he's still part of that branch internally. He's still part of that branch of the military.
Yep.
And he's still got a job to do. So what winds up happening
Yeah.
is, even though he works at the school, which we don't know what his job is except fucking Sandra Oh at this point, because
That's true.
aside from that one essay,
You don't do nothing.
there's nothing else he's done.
Nope.
He don't do nothing. He's just there on a visa.
Have a good
So
time.
I think the fact that he's had to be snapped back to reality about what his real job is, which is to make sure the general loses all his power, because that's his actual job
Yeah.
as a double agent. And it seems like he might have forgot that because he was too busy getting it in with the older woman. So he's going back about his business, trying to find this mole, which in reality is him. So he's trying to formulate a way of like trying to get the general off the scent. Like, come on, forget it, general. It's fine. You good?
Right.
Like,
right.
And then I think somebody makes a mention of those who deny are the mole is the mole, and that's brought up later in the episode. So he has to find a way to throw people off his scent, and we'll get to it. But he pulls a random ass name out of it just to save his own bacon, which we'll talk about later. But the interesting relationship, aside from him doing his job or forgetting his job, his relationship with Bond is interesting because it's almost as if you have a parent and they no longer have their constitutions and you have to take care of every little thing for them. You have to change them. You got to bathe them. You have to do all this thing. And because Bond is still shell-shocked all this time, he just comes in, looks at a picture of his wife and son, and still doesn't talk much, doesn't do much, stays in the house all day drinking. Apparently, the captain says he's been shitting on himself a whole bunch, so he has to take care of him. He's incontinent. So there's some caretaking that Blood Brother has to do to take care of his brother, which we said the last review, that the three of theirs relationship has to be a lot deeper than what it was implied. Even, it wasn't a throwaway Blood Brother celebration in the first episode. So this is him still promising to take care of his blood brother, but their relationship hits a bit of a snafu. And it's funny how while Bond is traumatized still, it takes another traumatic event, according to Bond, to snap him out of the malaise, right?
Yeah.
So Bond comes home. He sees the captain yamming Sandra Oh's character, walks in on them doing stuff. And we found it funny, but I understand why he did it from a cultural perspective.
Right.
He's still mourning the loss of his wife and his son. So he flips the picture on the mantle over so they don't have to see the sex going on in this house, which is supposed to be like his brother. Like, hey, man, I need to mourn. Like, you're not letting me mourn by bringing a broad into this house, which is brought up later, the argument they have. But I just thought that was a really good dynamic shift to kind of wake Bond out of his malaise. And again, it took a traumatic event in Bond's mind, which at the end of the episode, which we'll get to, another traumatic potential incident happens to snap him out of the malaise to bring him back to being Bond, right?
Yeah.
So we're all over the place at this point with us talking, but what winds up happening is that the general finally makes it. He makes it to America, or he makes it out the internment camp, I should say.
California,
And his wife, the house they gave them, bro. They gave them a beaten down shack. And I thought it was the hood, but then I went back and watched it again. I saw there was a nicer house on the left than them. So it might not have been the hood. It just might have been the most beaten down house on the block.
Right.
And the general's wife is so used to being, I'm taken care of. I have for no want. So the accommodations were not to her liking. And I even told you she had a hypergamous issue at some point where she goes, well, he's not the general anymore because this isn't the general that I married.
Oh, yeah.
This is just some dude who's overweight. He's fat. He's lazy. Like, this isn't my husband. It's basically just dissing him, saying, you're not the man I married, because he himself has turned to alcoholism. He himself has not become the person anymore that he was because he's so disenfranchised by losing his title of the general, right? He's just a dude now, and he has to accept that he's just a dude, and apparently his side lost the war. So there's a shame that goes with that. But in this stupor of being a drunk alcoholic, we still have people that come visit the house. We have a character called the Major that comes to visit the house. And again, I love how we have the narrator, which is the captain, but he's
Right.
not reliable. This is a trope that's used in a lot of things with the unreliable narrator where nobody has a name. It's the
Yeah. Like,
major. It's the
who is
captain.
that dude? Like, who is that dude? I don't know. I mean, he
Right. He
says it.
was
I
one
mean,
of
of
the
course, we know who it is,
inept.
but it's like, all right, is he a person
Yeah.
or just a character? Obviously.
Just a
So
character. And again, because he's an irregular narrator, we don't know if these people really are real or if he's just pulling this out of his ass, being in the
that's true.
POW
That's
camp
true.
in the present. So all
Yeah.
these people might just be a figment of his imagination, or he's just making all this shit up. So what winds up happening is that besides the captain being reminded that he has to go visit the general, the major stops by every so often. Now, if you
Mhm.
remember the first episode, they talk about, hey, just bring me a list of not totally incompetent people to cover
Mhm.
the general's tracks, but just people smart to keep the job and not smart enough to do anything about it to keep suspicion on the captain.
Right.
So I know I'm long basing this, so to compartmentalize it, the captain is still trying to throw the general off the scent. The major now has come in to kind of cheer up the general to get him back
Yeah.
on his feet, saying, hey, I was a member of the secret police. Like, I'm not stupid.
Yeah.
So what winds up happening is that we get the general opening a liquor store because he's such an
Yep.
alcoholic at this point, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And in doing so, he has hired Bond to work at the liquor store because Bond's become a raging alcoholic. So
Yep. Might as well.
now we have two Vietnamese men opening. I believe they're in California, so this might be like
Yep.
South Central. I don't know for sure.
I
They,
think it's like San Fran is what I'm thinking. Is what I was thinking.
okay,
Yeah.
so they've opened this liquor store owned by two Vietnamese men or operated by a Vietnamese man, and that's his new thing now. Now the neighborhood Asian community is now going to be
Mhm.
alcoholics now because the general and now Bond, and they have this big grand opening, right? This
Yep.
big like welcome, which is basically a front for saying, "Hey, I'm still the general. This is just the new war zone we're fighting on these front
Right.
lines."
Right.
Because there was some, I guess, some anti-Vietnamese, I guess,
Like,
racist spray
yeah,
painting
rigor that was thrown on the house of the
on
building,
the side
right?
of the
Yeah.
building.
Yep. Yep.
Which who had to clean it up?
The
The
errand
errand
boy,
boy.
good old captain. He's like, I just got here. He's like, here's a brush. Matter of fact, I think he gave him a new position, right? I think he was
Yes,
like, oh yeah, your new position is my something something advisor, and
of
here is
communication. Mhm.
here's a brush and here's the soap. Go ahead and scrub it off. And you're like, come on, man. Like, why you keep doing this to him? I mean, I don't know. It's crazy.
So at this point, we're at the liquor store, right? And they have
Mhm.
this grand open house, and he gives
Right.
this rousing message, to saying we're still going to win this war, right?
Right.
And also we're leaving out a small thing. There's been a reoccurring beat this episode of the captain meeting with these journalists, these random journalists that were against the war, right? And they're happy that America lost the war, or like he's being interviewed on behalf of one general, Hammer,
Yeah.
Professor Hammer, and then in the liquor store by someone he went to school with, which is basically they have this insult war of like, well, I always thought that you were a sellout. Well, I'm
Right.
more Vietnamese than you because I'm full-blooded Vietnamese and you're only half. So it's going back and forth, opposing viewpoints at this liquor store, which is now the home front of the new battle going on. So it's weird for me to see that where now the general is finally going back to being the general again,
Yeah.
and his men. Remember, these are men that the captain picked specifically to come over because he thought they were inept, but they'll
Right.
follow the general anywhere.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're more inspired now, right? Like, yeah, we're gonna still win this war to the point now where the major has a little bit more of a foothold within the relationship of the captain and the general
Yeah.
because I believe he brought the general's wife a special candy
Yeah. From like back
from
home.
Vietnam that you can't get in the States. So
Right.
what did you think of now we have this character of the major that's now going to play a part going forward when we thought everybody they brought over was inept?
Yeah, and I thought it was funny because this major, they actually called him the dumpling, right? The
The
fat
dumpling.
one, right? So that's how they refer to them. They were like, which major? The one was called like the chopsticks, another was called the dumpling, I think. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of messed up. They don't have names, like you said.
Nobody
No one
gets a
has a
name.
name. They're just major chopstick and major dumpling. Like that's crazy. So I was like, wow, that's kind of wild. So this new major coming into effect, I thought he's trying to get a leg up, right? He's trying to presumably get himself in good with the general because obviously he still believes in what the general has
Yes.
been pushing, the same
Yes.
rigor and the same information he's been putting out. He believes we're going to get back home. We're going to win this thing. And in my head, I'm thinking like, how do y'all think you really going to get all the way back to Vietnam and fight this war? And who's really going to be with you?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody's probably turned over a new leaf. Everything's fine. People are probably tired of violence. So they're like, why would we want to start another war where, several more innocent people die at this point? So in this sense, I think a lot of the people that are in this whole like group with the general are a little bit delusional at this point, except for the
A
captain.
lot of it, yes.
And I'm like, y'all are delusional. You're not getting back there. Y'all, you got no weapons. You got no army. You got no transportation. Y'all might as well just make a new life right here. The general got prime real estate in San Fran. You know how much that's worth right now? Is what I was thinking
Right
watching.
now,
I'm
yeah.
like, you live in San Fran with a 3-story house. You're rich, bro. You got a $2 million house in 2024 right now, if you think about it. That's just me. I was just looking a little too in depth in the housing system. I was like, oh, you got it good, brother. And a liquor store. Income is about to be wild. So we're seeing this scene and we're seeing it undeveloped in while the general is giving a speech within the liquor store. And we show that, there are some people that walk out on the speech because they're like, nah, I'm not here for that. Like, I'm just here to live my life in the States now that we're here. And of course, the general's like, yeah, get the rats out of here, right? Like, keep
anybody else want to jump ship?
Anybody else want to leave? Get out now. So he's saying that, you know what? In the speech, he's telling everybody the only way that we lost this war is because we have a rat or spy within our midst. So I'm thinking like, all right, well, they're going to, hash it out on their own, not the same day, right? That they're having this celebration. And all of a sudden, everybody starts lining up in the back, right? In like the coat closet.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here like, uh-oh, this is not good. Because obviously, if you jump out of the line, that means you're guilty, right? If you've done something wrong. You see the major, I think, was one of the first people that went in there, dumpling. And he's coming out. He's like patting his head from sweating. And I'm like, uh-oh. Either he got like, tortured or somebody put a gun to his head or something. And we finally get to the point where Captain is the last person at the end of the line. And he goes in after Bond goes in. And Bond obviously passed. So they go inside and he's greeted by Claude, right? We're like, oh my God, Robert Downey Jr. Robert Downey Jr. 2 episodes is 2 different people. We notice people. We could tell that's him. Like he is Claude. He's also a Professor Hammer as well. The makeup's good, but we know that's him. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
He's sitting here. They're having like a little general conversation. The captain's like, phew, like maybe I'm good. Maybe I'm all right. And he goes in the office and he sits down. And the general has like this 38, I think. And he's like,
long and shiny,
wow,
bro.
Look what Claude gave me. This is the shiniest gun I've ever seen. It looked like it was from James Bond 007, I'm pretty sure, because it looked good. I was like, wow, that looks really, really nice. And they're sitting there, and it's funny because you brought up the point and you said that about the spy talk, right? And he walked in with Claude. Claude has his arm around him. He was like, nobody says there isn't a spy except for a spy. And I'm like, oh shit, he dead. Like, I was like, oh, they got him. And then we sit down, the general got the gun. I'm like, oh my goodness. But we talked about it backstage. We had like a little theory about why we keep seeing this reoccurring character of Robert Downey Jr., right? And I guess we put it together and we try to figure out that it seems like we never see the father of the captain on the show. So I'm like, all right, all these other men or these Caucasian men that keep showing up here in the show seem to be like influential people in his life that maybe he can't depict or put a face to, so he's like, you know what, I see them as my dad, and maybe that's why we keep seeing the reflection of the same person in here, which I thought was strange, but also it kind of makes sense though, because I think you said it was 2 more characters that he's actually going to play in the show, which are different, but they obviously all still have Robert Downey Jr.'s face. And And going into this scene, right, where he's sitting down at the table with the general, did you think like he's gonna get got? Like this is it, pulling it.
No, I didn't think he was gonna get got. I just wanted to see where it was gonna go.
Yeah.
I wanted to see how he was gonna get his way out of it, because
Right.
I'm now intrigued how the captain is going to kind of finagle his way out of these tight situations
Yeah.
when he has no weaponry. It's basically just his mouth and his eyes, his mouth, and his gift of gab, as it were.
Yeah.
And at the beginning of the episode, I even told you while we were watching it, I said, "Oh, he has daddy issues." The captain gives off daddy issues, and to your theory, he might just well be envisioning every male of importance that happens to look Caucasian as his dad, Robert Downey Jr.'s face is on all these men, and it might Robert Downey Jr. might be his dad. He just sees his face everywhere, you know, because we find out this episode his dad is French and his mom is Vietnamese, like I said earlier. So he sees Claude. He's like, "What are you doing here?" Like, "Oh my God!" And you know, they kind of interrogate him, and I love the quick thinking. I'm not quick-witted enough to pull this stuff off. Admittedly, I'm not. But he kind of says, "Okay, well, it's not me. I have a theory about who it is. I think it's the major."
Right.
What do you mean it's the major? Like, what are you talking about? Like, he did, for me, I thought he randomly just threw out the major's name.
Right.
But then he had evidence as to why he thinks
which is
it's
really
the
smart. It
major.
was so smart. I was like,
And he threw the candy. He goes, "Well, look, you can't get this candy here in the States." He owns a candy shop, maybe, is where he could get this, because now the general has a liquor store, but the major has a candy store. So he was able to get this stuff. So maybe he's the mole.
Yeah.
That's my thought process. And I'm thinking, this dude is going to sacrifice the major to save his skin. And to me, thus far, I don't think the major's done anything but just try to be a decent human to the general. So
he's been so nice, man, and the whole entire thing. Like he's been like the goofy guy that just gets thrown on the bus at this point, because it just seems like, and to your point about the candy store, there he was saying that he got it from back home, but they're like, well, how's he able to get candy from back home? Because all of our family's been persecuted because they were part of the South and not part of the North. So they're like, how's he able to get all this stuff from his family? And they said like, oh, he's part Chinese. They were like, oh, we know we can't trust him because he's half, right? And they were like, oh, his family does have prominent fortune back in China as well. So now they're like, okay, where's he getting all this extra money from? And this is just kind of raised and kind of confirmed more of the theory of the captain, to your point, though. So
and we're led to believe that the captain is going through some kind of like regret for throwing him under the bus, because toward the end of the episode, he's given orders to kill the major. And you know, to keep an eye on him, but to eventually kill him if he is indeed the spy. So while the captain is still writing back to Mon, one of the last notes we see that gets burned is, "Should I kill the major?" So he's pretty much going through his own little like, crap, what do I do? Like, should I kill this man to cover my tracks? And I mentioned earlier, there were moments of trauma where we had to snap Bond out of something. So he had, I don't recall what it was. I know they had a fight, the captain and Bond, because of, you know, the sex with Sandra Oh. So he kept hitting his head, right? So we're taken back to the scene where he hits his head on the plane to the States because his wife and son are dead. So it's like a tick. And so he gets snapped out of it while the captain's driving, because the captain says, "Hey, I need your help." And he tells him, basically, I might need you to help me kill somebody. And he's like, who? He goes, "The major." And he goes, "I think I could help you with that."
He all for it.
Now I'm listening, because now Bond thinks the major is responsible for this circle of events. So he goes, "All right." It's like the usual suspects, where he goes from verbal to to Kaiser Soze. It snaps, "I can help you with that." And then that's where the episode ends, right? So we're left like, whoa. is Bond now going to be the hitman? Like, what's going to
Yeah.
go on here now? So I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued.
I am as well. And I think that honestly is going to be the new job of Bond. I feel like Bond is out to get anyone for the deaths of his son and his wife.
Correct.
Not his ability not to run faster, but all the crazy events that happened that led up to them being essentially blown up. But yeah, I think you know what, the episode was pretty good, and I keep thinking back, I'm like, man, it's really based on the story of the captain reliving all these events, right?
Allegedly.
What? Allegedly, right? And I think the allegedly part is really what keeps me going in this season, because I mean, granted, we're only in episode 2, but I keep thinking like, man, what if he's really just making up this story, right? To keep himself alive in this
Like the usual
POW camp,
suspects.
right? Yeah. He's like, all right, what if I just make my story really, really long until I'm able to get rescued? Maybe what if he's just an American, right? And he got captured in the POW camp. He's like, all right, if I make up the story about how I'm on this side and that side
Triple
as a
agent.
spy, yeah, maybe I can survive until somebody's here to rescue me. Granted, folks, I haven't read the book. I don't know anything about the book, and I will not read
nothing
the
about
book
the novel
because I'm going straight off of this show. But yeah, I thought it was a great episode. What did you think? How would you rate it, Damien?
I would give it a 4 out of 5.
Okay.
Only because there wasn't a lot of action, like you said, but
Right.
this was more in line with being espionage. Like I said,
Right.
episode 1, I feel like that's what we're gonna get, a lot of edge of your seat action. It dragged on a little bit at certain points of the episode where I kind of was like, okay, this is boring, but 4 out of 5.
Yeah, same. I would give it a 4 out of 5. I think it was really good, and they did a great job, honestly. And I'm excited to see episode 3. I feel like we're going to see some more Bond karate in that episode.
He still
like
got some moves. He still has
he's
moves.
got some moves, so he's going to show them off. I feel like, and Major Dumpling might get it at this point, man. But yeah, guys, let us know what you think down in the comments down below. Make sure you go check out the Sympathizer episode 2 premiering April 21st at 9 p.m. on HBO Eastern Standard Time, and then streaming also on Max. If you like content just like this and you want to see more content like this, make sure you check us out at biggoldbeltmedia.com. Until next time, peace.
I